Hello again, whiskey friends. Thanks for joining everybody for another Tuesday discussion. Here on Tuesdays, we do like to make video content in response to questions and comments we are getting either from YouTube, Instagram, or from our wonderful patrons. So if you are interested in a topic like this, just let us know. We'll get back to a video response as soon as we can. So today's question was all about single barrels. And specifically, we seem to give the impression that single barrels are better than blended products and better than batches. And I can see why we give that impression a little bit with some of the reviews that we do. We do get into a lot of single barrels. We love hunting single barrels. But if you were to listen to us when we talk about this topic live, we love blends as well. You know, when it comes to single barrels, that is like being amazed by science. You're trying to imagine all the things that happened in that barrel that made that particular barrel of whiskey taste so amazing. From the weather, from the wood, the chemical reactions. It's very much a science experiment. But blends are a work of art. Blends are magical. Blends are something created by a person that wouldn't exist naturally without them and their skills. So there is room for both of these. And what we're going to do in today's video is highlight brands where I think the single barrels are better than the batches, and other brands where I think the batches are better than the single barrels. So thank you for joining me today, whiskey friends. Let's kick off the show. All right. So today, as we go through these brands, I am also sipping on a magical creation of my own as I go through these brands, and I will reveal the recipe at the end of this video. So please stick around if you're interested. But there is a combination of these bottles that I'm just about to show that make a pretty impressive blend on their own, blending the single barrel and blending the batch together for something that is completely mine. So cheers, everybody. Oh my gosh, that is so good. I can't wait to reveal this later. All right, we're going to go back and forth here. So the first one I'm going to show is brands where thus far the single barrels are better than the batches, but the batches are relatively new. So we'll give this one a chance as we go on. But for this one, I would highlight the single barrels of Bardstown Bourbon Companies over the batched product. Now, some of these can be different mash bills. Some of these are the exact same. So if you see the White Origin series, that is 36% rye, 6 years old, there are single barrels floating around that are the exact same mash bill, the exact same age. The big difference in these, though, is that the batch product comes in around 96 proof, whereas the single barrels come in at cask strength. So it's not exactly an apples to apples comparison. When I say I would prioritize the single barrels over the batches, you also have the point that the single barrels cost about $30 to $35 more than the batch product. So that is another contributor there. But if you were to go back just a handful of years, it was far less common for every single batch product to have an equivalent cask strength. The only way you could get the cask strength is if you found a single barrel, and that is implying that they even offered it at cask strength. A lot of brands were watering things down even when it was a single barrel selection. Some still do that. But now it is very commonplace to have cask strength products all over the shelf. That wasn't the case just 5 years ago. So we're going to go back and forth here. So the next one I'm going to highlight is a brand where I would prioritize the batches over the single barrels. And in this case, we are going to be talking about Elijah Craig comparing the batches to the single barrels. Now, this isn't necessarily a fair comparison, though, based on what's happening with A124, maybe this will be a closer comparison as time goes on if the age statement on Elijah Craig barrel proof continues to drift downwards. But when it comes to the 12 plus age stated batches versus the 8-year, 9-year, 10-year single barrels that I've been having, I really haven't found a single barrel that knocked my socks off in the same way that at least most of the batches of Elijah Craig barrel proof does. It is a totally different animal. And I have found myself more and more passing on Elijah Craig single barrels when I see them at the store, but I would never pass on Elijah Craig barrel proof, even on a mediocre batch. And I think that says a lot. The next one I'm going to highlight is going to be my darling brand. You know, I'm a big MGP guy here, but I have been a critic off and on of this Remus label for quite some time, dating all the way back to Remus 2 and Remus 3. So even though those were good batches, even at the time, there were single barrel proof products from MGP, maybe a Joseph Magnus single barrel, something like that I could get on the shelf from time to time. Why spend $80 to $100 for a 100 proof blend when I can get the cast strength single barrel of a similar age? And a lot of the times the flavors in the single barrel are better. And I feel like this has happened again with Remus as we get into the Remus 7. The age statements are coming down, the price is going up. Why would I care about this 8 to 10 year blend at 100 proof for $120 when I can get killer single barrels, 7 years, 8 years, 9 years, 10 years old from brands like Backbone that cost me half that price, maybe at a maximum $80? Thank you, please. Give me the single barrels over the blends. Now, for the next one, this one might be surprising here, but I would say here, based on admittingly a small sample size when it comes to my single barrel tasting opportunities with this brand, give me the batches of Stagg Jr. Give me the batches, $60. The picks just to get the stickers, I don't know, man. I loved every single barrel that I got to taste, but I get blown away more frequently by some of the batch products. So that's very, very interesting to me. You know, I'm always curious about the ages in these single barrels, what's going on, but I would take a batch of Stagg Jr. over a single barrel a majority of the time. Yet to have a single barrel that blew my socks off, is it worth that additional layer of hunting and sometimes the markup? I don't think so. So going to my last brand here, where I would say single barrels beat the batches. This might be controversial. It also has to do with what's in my glass. But I have really, really loved more often single barrel, specifically single barrel picks of Jack Daniel's barrel proof. When you're getting up there, 130, 135 proof, these things are packed with flavor, despite the fact that they're typically around 6 years old, compared to the 10-year or the 12-year age-stated Jack Daniel's blends. These come in at a much lower proof. This one, I believe, is 107. Yeah, batch one of the 12-year, 107 proof. I would take this single barrel over this 12-year, which is the complete opposite of somewhat what I just said with Elijah Craig, just to point out the brand-to-brand differences when it comes to whether I would prioritize the single barrels or the batches. Don't get me wrong. If I see this, I am buying it. But I have spent so much more time and had so much more memorable experiences with Jack Daniel's single barrels. Now, with that in mind, one thing I did do is take 50% of that barrel proof Jack Daniels and 50% of that Jack Daniels 12-year. And I made my own blend. And it is utterly delightful. Challenge you to do the same if you have this ability with either the Jack Daniels 10-year or the 12-year. Blend it with one of your favorite or the best single barrel that you have on your bar right now. Oh my gosh. It is a chocolate covered banana. It makes me think of the banana stand in Arrested Development. Oh my gosh, that is so good though. That is really good. That's like a blend again type of thing. I'll get into that later. So let me do the last brand here. This is where I would actually say the blends and the batches are better than the single barrels. And I've heard a lot of people parrot this sentiment lately, more and more. But with Old Forester, I have been deprioritizing the barrel proof single barrels. I have passed on so many the last 6 months. It's just not something I hunt. I don't see the variability in the single barrels. I don't see outliers that I want to hunt that could be really, really special pours. Just never found it after so many darn chances. Give me the consistencies of their batch products. And the one thing I am hearing more and more is that people are more impressed with the single barrels that have been proofed down to 100 versus these ones that are in the 130s that a lot of people say are too hot. Maybe there's something about the proof point when it comes to Old Forester, but I find myself going to Old Forester 1920 more than I find myself going to my single barrels. And once again, that's a different type of experience here. You can see the brands that I highlighted across the board. It says something if I'm going to the $65 always on the shelf one versus the single barrels that I have in my house. It's not that I'm doing it out of scarcity here. So that concludes the list that I put together for this particular video. It is not always the case that single barrels are better than the batch products. Sometimes the blends are better, sometimes the batches are better, and it really just depends on the brand and things like the age statements, the proof, and if it is as good at barrel proof without any water as it could be blended down. Each brand's a little different, and once again, that is part of the magic of whiskey. But there is something magical to me when it comes to blends, because you know people made that themselves, blending those ingredients together, going for the profile that we're going for. We love our blenders. So cheers to all the blenders out there. So thank you for joining me today, whiskey friends. If you have a question or comment that you'd like us to handle in a future discussion, please let us know in the comments below, and we'll catch you on the next Tuesday discussion. Goodbye, everybody.
Jeff, just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello again. Oh, Jeffrey, you should just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello again.